Long before maps divided the world into borders, before towers pierced the sky, before roads cut through mountains, there was a boundary every human understood, not drawn in ink, but in shadow. It began where the last field ended, where the last lantern faded, where the trees grew too close together to see the sky. That boundary was the forest, and for thousands of years people across the world believed the same thing. When you crossed into the woods, you were being noticed. Not hunted, not chased, not necessarily harmed, but noticed. In the old villages of Eastern Europe, hunters spoke of something that walked without sound between the trunks. They called it the master of the woods. Not a king, not a demon, but a keeper. A being that could twist paths into circles and stretch distances until a short walk became an endless maze. In the mountains of Japan, woodcutters whispered about spirits dwelling inside ancient trees. Before cutting one down, they would bow, not out of superstition, but out of caution. Because if the tree housed something sacred, taking it without permission meant inviting imbalance into your life. In medieval Europe, strange faces covered in leaves appeared carved into cathedrals. Eyes peering through stone vines, mouths spilling branches instead of words. Even inside churches, the image remained, as if, no matter how civilized people became, they could not fully silence what lived beyond their walls. Different lands, different names, but the same instinct. The forest was not empty. Why? Because forests once represented everything humanity could not control. They swallowed sound, they bent light, they erased direction. And when humans lose control, they create stories to explain what they feel. But here is the twist. Those stories were not born from ignorance. They were born from understanding. Ancient people depended on forests for survival, wood for warmth, game for food, herbs for medicine. The forest sustained them, but only if respected. Too much hunting? The animals vanished. Too much cutting? The land eroded. Too much arrogance? Disaster followed. So they told stories of guardians, not to frighten children, but to remind adults. The spirit of the woods was not simply a creature. It was a law disguised as a legend. Take only what you need. Walk carefully. Remember that you are a guest. And if you ignore that law, the forest teaches you, not through anger, but through indifference. Imagine standing alone beneath towering trees. No phone signal, no streetlights, no engine noise. Just wind threading through branches older than your entire bloodline. At first there is peace, and then something else. Awareness. Every snapped twig sounds intentional. Every shifting shadow feels deliberate. Your senses sharpen. Your breath slows. Your body remembers something your mind has forgotten. You are small. That feeling, that primal humility, is the true forest spirit. Across cultures, heroes enter forests before transformation. Fairy tales never begin in open fields. They begin at the tree line, because the forest represents the unknown self, the tangled parts of your mind you avoid, the questions you postpone, the fears you bury under routine. When someone in folklore gets lost in the woods, it is rarely random. They are confronting something, a doubt, a flaw, a choice, and the forest does not guide them out until they change. This is why so many ancient tales speak of paths that vanish and voices that mislead. The woods in story form mirror the confusion of growth. Think about it. Have you ever felt lost in your own life? Uncertain, disoriented, unsure which direction leads forward? That is the forest, not made of trees, but decisions. And like the old legends say, if you panic, you wander in circles. But if you pause, if you listen, if you move with awareness, a path appears. The so-called spirits of the woods often shift shape in myth. Sometimes tall as giants, sometimes small as children, sometimes invisible entirely. Because what we fear in the forest changes depending on what we carry inside. To the greedy, it becomes punishing. To the respectful, it becomes protective. To the arrogant, it becomes humbling. There is a reason ancient builders carved leafy faces into sacred places. They understood something profound. You cannot separate yourself from nature. no matter how advanced you become. Steel and glass may rise, but roots remain underneath. Modern life has insulated us from the wild. Climate control, GPS navigation, artificial light that turns night into day. Yet when you step into an untouched forest, something shifts instantly. Your voice lowers without thinking. Your footsteps soften. You instinctively look around, not because something is there, but because something could be. That could be is powerful. It is possibility. And possibility is what ancient people honored. The forest was danger, yes, but it was also medicine. Food, shelter, mystery. It was a reminder that life is larger than human plans. Today, we rarely consider ourselves guests on this planet. We act as owners. But the old stories suggest something else entirely. They whisper that ownership is an illusion, that the earth does not belong to us. We belong to it, and the forest spirit, it is the embodiment of that truth, not a monster lurking behind bark, but a presence that exists whenever humans forget their place. Some anthropologists suggest that belief in forest guardians helped early societies manage resources sustainably, that myths enforced balance long before environmental science existed. And perhaps that is true, but that explanation alone feels incomplete, because even now, even knowing there is no literal creature hiding behind the trees, the feeling persists. Stand alone in deep woods at dusk. Tell me you do not feel watched. Not in paranoia, but in presence, as if the world itself is aware. Maybe the spirit of the forest was never meant to be proven. Maybe it was meant to be felt, to remind us that humility is wisdom, that silence has power, that not every space exists for human dominance. There is one final layer to this story. The forest does not chase you. It does not call your name. It does not demand belief. It simply stands, patient. It has watched empires rise and collapse. It has seen languages born and forgotten. It will remain long after modern noise fades. And that is the most unsettling truth of all. The forest does not need us, but we need it. So perhaps the ancient people were not naive. Perhaps they were observant. They recognize that when you enter a forest, you are stepping into something ancient, interconnected, and alive in ways beyond measurement. And to name that feeling, they called it spirit. Next time you walk among tall trees, pause, not to search for something supernatural, but to notice your own awareness, the stillness, the quiet recalibration, the sense that you are part of something older than history. That is the gift the old legends tried to protect. Not fear, perspective. So the question is not whether the forest is watching, the question is whether you are finally paying attention. Did this story change the way you see the woods? Let me know in the comments what legend or ancient mystery we should explore next. And if you felt that quiet presence while listening, subscribe and step with me into the next forgotten story. Because some myths were not created to entertain. They were created to remind us who we are.